scary skeletons and shivers down your spine. Shrieking skulls will shock your soul, seal your doom tonight. Spooky, scary skeletons speak with such a screech. You'll shake and shudder in surprise when you hear these zombies shriek.
We're gonna get back into it.
You're so misunderstood. You only want to socialize.
Kind of sucks. This has happened one other time.
I mean, we could just explain what happened.
And only one other time. That just kind of blows.
Yeah.
So we have to recover real quick before we lose momentum and get tired of doing this. Because we were only 20 minutes in, which is mostly pre-conversation.
Yeah, we talked about it.
This just sucks. So we were on your phone, we were watching, and we have to talk about it now. The Indian, what is it, adaptation?
Yeah.
You could say it's a cable show in India, and it is, if anyone has been frequenting Reddit at all at the time of mentioning this, then you know what we're talking about, because this is fucking ridiculous. And
it's
the the scene with Georgie being pulled into the pool, but he more so just kind of
hops in,
just pops on in.
He just hops right in.
And by scene, I mean it's 5 minutes of a clown in a pool, just kind of waving his arm.
Yeah, like pointing
saying,
down at the pool
come
water
on,
and stuff.
come on, we all float in here.
But
it's like a literal pool.
Yeah.
We all float here.
Yeah, we're floaties.
Hop on in.
We're floaters.
Yeah, that's not what Stephen King means.
No, but anyways, that adaptation is 51 episodes.
Jesus fucking Christ.
So they may cover a lot of the stuff that like the miniseries didn't cover, and who knows, maybe that the new movie.
I could see why you'd be tempted
to watch it all,
to see what happens there.
Yeah,
specifically
that's 51
with
episodes. They're 20
specifically
minutes long.
with the shit American Horror Story asshole 7 intro that we watched afterwards, which consisted of several things, mostly being scorpions, crabs, statues, the same baby dolls, clown dolls.
You missed the most important part.
Barbed wire.
Lots
just
and lots
being
of barbed
flashed
wire.
in your face.
And a bleeding ear.
You kind of do the background like boom, boom, boom. Okay, so do that.
I'm not doing that.
Boom, 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 boom. Because then what comes in next is la, 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 boom, boom. It's really dissonant and kind of stupid, but you thought.
I thought what?
It was kind of creepy.
I thought it was a little creepy. It's the little children.
The clown's face is too hilarious, and they're stepping on so many visual and narrative tropes in horror films.
What if
You're
instead
touching me.
What if instead of a spider he turns into a scorpion?
I think
that's why they kept showing the scorpion.
That's kind of the connection I made when I saw it.
What if instead of the deadlights, it's just barbed wire that shoots out of his fucking eyes?
What if
it just goes into their eyes?
What if instead of a cave or sewers or anything, they build a set out of like Play-Doh and they put a literal scorpion in there, and they're like, oh, the clown, he transformed into a monster, and you know they just put these little things that are like little versions of the adults like right in front of the scorpion, and he kind of like bats him around for a little bit, or maybe they put like scorpion food or like or they dress up little bugs as the characters in, because their budget, as I said last time, is $7.42.
Yeah.
Taking one look at Pennywise, you could clearly see they found him in a van down by the river, and he's clearly doing the entire 51 episodes pro bono. Or as he would say, pro boner.
I don't think he even had a van. I think he was just down by the river, lying there.
Where else is he gonna rape the children?
In the sewers.
Just next to the river, I guess.
They thought he was perfect for the part.
So anyway,
That's terrible.
How funny would it actually be though if it's almost like Them, like the 50s movie with the ants, just like CGI, well, not even green screened on top of footage of people running. It was like a scorpion green screened on like 7 adults acting like they're scared.
I'm sure that's what it is.
It might be.
This is why I want to watch
intrigued.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I am intrigued. But would I slog through 1,000 minutes to see maybe 5?
You've watched worse.
American Horror Story.
Yeah, and that has, what,
which we were
6 seasons?
talking about as well. Yeah.
Fuck that show.
Yeah, that show is kind of the butt of, like, every joke in horror.
It's like every season starts out the same.
It's not bad cable. I will say that much.
Yeah.
It's not bad cable. It's just bad media in general.
Every
When you compare it to other cable, it's probably higher scale because it's actually Fox.
You can see Lady Gaga's butt in the one.
And they put some
season.
time into the
Lady Gaga's
style.
shit.
They tried to be as offensive as possible.
By showing Lady Gaga's butt?
I would say just with all the visual gore, like they just fill anything that would trigger someone in that fucking show. Literally, it's been 7 seasons of them trying to trigger people.
I don't know if it's been 7. I think it's 6.
I think it's 7.
I think Hotel was 6. Oh, and they came out with that other one. Shit, what was
Cult.
the new one even called? Was it Cult?
Cult.
That one looked really dumb.
It might even be 8, dude. That's how
No.
fucking... Yeah, it might be. Anyway, so...
You got House,
come
the
on.
first one. Asylum.
Murder House, Asylum, Coven.
Freak Show.
Hotel.
And Cult. So they have 6. Cult is 6. I feel like we're missing one.
They're redoing...
what was the one with the alien abduction one?
That was 2. That was Asylum.
Okay.
The seasons used to be longer. That's all.
Oh, there's a season... the top thing on Google is season 8. I think we missed one.
Oh, yeah, the reality show. That wasn't... The reality show was last year. It wasn't...
What the fuck was the reality show one?
They're filming a show in a house in the South, and they got the chick from Misery to play, like, a butcher.
No, the most recent one's Cult. Is that the one you're thinking of?
Cult. Roanoke. Roanoke was last year, is what I was saying.
No, that was last year.
No, I'm talking about a September to June scale. I'm not counting the summer. So I'm saying October of 2017, because you said last season. You when you said Hotel, I think you got a year wrong. Anyway, Roanoke is the one where Kathy Bates is playing someone called the Butcher, and they're trying to film a movie they're trying to film a reality TV show in Roanoke to kind of parody the Roanoke disappearances. And halfway through the season, it changes.
I don't remember this at all.
It's because it was terrible. It's because it was awful.
Was it?
Absolutely. The house was actually haunted, but they also made a horror film about it. So the first part of the season is the horror film. The second part of the season is the actors revisiting the set, and they're played by a different cast. It's like a reality TV show adaptation. The actors
but the
and
reviews are good for this one.
No season has been as good as one.
That's because one came and everyone's like, "What the fuck is this?" Now it's just like, we know it's gonna be.
One tries the hardest.
I like that. I like that poster.
Just watch Roanoke. Yeah. Anyway.
I didn't even fucking know that existed.
Yeah.
84 episodes of this shit?
Of the entire show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not.
I thought 50... have you seen all the episodes? And you're going to talk bad about watching 51 episodes of Indian It.
Yeah, I mean... Jesus. I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy. Forcing them to slog through 20 minutes of stuff you don't even have subtitles for, and it just sounds like garbage and looks like garbage. And
I would watch it if it had subtitles.
Oh, even if it didn't, I would... You know what I would need? I would need a very ridiculous English dub.
That would make it work.
That's what I would need.
We can make that happen.
We could be the MXC of
Indian It.
Of Indian It. We'll make it happen.
Yeah. All right.
I'll come up with some kind of bullshit plot. It'll be about, like, a clown wanting to throw a party for the kids instead of wanting to... He's just like, no, like, get in the fucking pool. Get in the fucking pool. We're supposed to have fun. We're supposed to be swimming. And he's like, nah. You know, like, the kid, he's kind of smiling at the clown. He's like, no, you're silly.
And clown's like, no, this is a party for you.
The kid will be played by frowns. Georgie will be played by frowns, except his name is not Georgie. His name is, I don't know, Patel. His first name is literally, I don't know. Second name, Patel.
God damn.
Anyway, so today on this episode, if it doesn't fucking crash on us anytime
soon, crashes, we're just going to Mario Party.
I wouldn't blame you at that
point. We'll take that as a sign.
This is like the third time we've essentially sat down to record.
You want to tell the lovely listeners what happened last time?
We got locked out of my house for 3 hours. He came over to record. We had food. We had warm food in hand.
Well, I had a cold sub.
And
you
then
had warm food. Mine was already cold. It was
and
fine.
Then we got locked out of my house for 3 hours. So that's what happened.
And I stuck by the entire time.
Yeah, you
did. The entire fucking time. You were just like, you can go home. And I was like, nah, I'll wait with you.
You came inside, fell asleep watching 3 episodes of SpongeBob.
Fell asleep fucking immediately.
You got through like 1.
2. It was one full episode.
Anyway, we've been rewatching SpongeBob. So that's all that's happened since Are You Afraid of the Dark, which we haven't talked about since
forever.
Silverlight. I don't think.
Which there's nothing worth talking about. Silverlight was the highlight of the entire show.
You watch, but you can't just say Silverlight's the best because you kind of have to watch the prior 7 seasons to really appreciate Silverlight. Mm-hmm. It is the Avengers of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
God, it's so
Samuel
good.
Jackson's there. So. Yeah, they bring back the readers from 1 through 4, and they team up with the readers from... Well, no, it's just Mark.
I think it's Mark and someone else. Isn't it Mark and one of the girls?
No.
Are you sure?
It's his little brother. It's a family thing, remember? It's about
That's
the grandpa.
why I thought it was a little girl.
Yeah, no, the girl was a reader in 5 through 7. But it's just Mark... I always call him, is his name Topher? I think it is. He grows up and naturally his brother goes to fucking college or something. But he comes back to tell him the grandpa's dead and they fucking all go on an adventure against ghosts and a Pennywise type monster. And it was mind-blowing and fantastic at the same time.
Those episodes. I would
it was
watch those episodes.
It was a 3-part series. Which means it was an hour and 20. It was an hour. It was an hour.
Yeah.
It was an hour-long episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark, and
it was amazing.
They had a good budget. They had a good plot. They had good writing, and you genuinely care for the first time in the entire show. And it's the 7th season opening, which is so sad because it should have been the series fucking finale.
That should have been the finale.
Show.
Yeah.
But didn't we find the finale oddly satisfying? It ended.
No.
Didn't it end a certain way?
No, it just ended. Like it just ends like it would any other season.
Interesting.
Because I don't think they knew that they. I didn't.
Oh, you know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about when Mark throws on the fucking pixie dust onto the fire and it like puts the fire out and everyone gets real spooked.
Oh, that's Silver. That's
at the beginning of Silverlight. Yeah. Exactly. Silverlight.
Because remember when that happened, we lost our shit.
We were like, what?
It was one of those. Not expecting it.
It was one of those what moments. You know, it's when you've just taken a huge rip and you're holding it into the best of your ability, but everything about you wants to like exhale and cough it out and just be exasperated about what just happened on the screen. So Silverlight was fucking awesome. We also talked about. I'm going back in order of what we talked about. 15 minutes ago. We talked about the ritual a little bit. I just had to say that, like, There aren't many people I've talked about movies lately with, and when it seems like I'm talking, they either hadn't seen or hadn't been interested in seeing them, so I haven't really had anyone to bounce shit off of.
Mm-hmm.
But recently I saw Ritual, and I remember texting you during watching it and just being like, dude, and you were like, I already did, and I was like, fuck.
That, it was a good movie.
It was fantastic. I had one of the coolest monsters I've seen in
so fucking cool
years, and it's wholly original.
Definitely like a Del Toro monster.
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of. Just the creativity of it. Movie-wise,
it was very almost a British Shyamalan flick, or Shyamalan. Very tense, very quiet. Things only really snap off screen for a while, and in the last 20 minutes of the movie, it's just pure monster creature feature bullshit.
I will say,
real fun.
Because I watched it with my girlfriend, and the scene in the very, very beginning when they go into the liquor store, and like they kill him. Holy shit! We watched that. I was like, I feel dirty.
Yeah, I felt fucked.
Because it just happens so fast. Like it happens, we're just like, oh fuck.
You know what changed things for me? They didn't have guns.
No, he had a bat. Or like,
there are glass bottles all around you, cutthroats.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like if any of my fucking friends got downed by a baseball bat in front of me,
I don't know if it was either like a baseball bat or like a billy club or something.
It was like a billy club.
It was something like that.
But point withstanding.
Well, that's why it was such a big deal that he didn't do anything. He had a glass bottle in his hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he didn't do anything. Like, I can understand, like, sitting there and thinking about it, and then, like, your friend gets smacked in the head. You're like, oh, shit, I have to do something.
I'm sorry, but you go straight into tactical resilience.
Yeah.
All that I could think about was, okay, they don't know you're there. Go around the other side and smack them both behind the head. No. He was like, even if he did, he was like, no, you're killing him. Like, he turned to his friend.
Yeah, he did it. He did it in one. He probably did it in one
no.
deaths.
Yeah, so you walk up behind them and you take both of them out at the same time.
Yeah. 2 glass bottles. Whoosh.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You ever have a glass bottle fucking broken over your fucking head?
No.
Well, exactly, because you wouldn't remember it.
Especially like a liquor fucking bottle. Like, those things are thick. Pick up the thickest one you can find.
I told a story.
It might not even break.
I told a story in '66 where I was in a liquor store and I saw an old man fall on a bottle like that.
Can we not talk about this?
We don't have to talk about that.
I don't like it.
I already told the story. Go back to episode 66. It was quite frightening. But again, horrifying. Saw it happen. Yeah. Blood everywhere, and I immediately snapped into action.
Blood on a white floor always just
shit. Linoleum.
It just, I don't like the
speckled linoleum.
I don't like it. It freaks me out. I feel like it would just pop really well.
It did.
And I don't like it. Yeah.
It did.
Okay.
It did to the point that one of the cashiers, when everything was said and done and they were still mopping it up, one of the cashiers went, "Happy Halloween." and I still had blood on my hands, and I kind of turned to her and I was like, I gave her this like face that had to have said, "Now's not the time."
I would have fucking lost it.
With your hands covered in blood? Yeah.
I'm like, fuck yeah, dude. Like, what are you gonna do in that situation?
I mean, give me 10 minutes to fucking recover. The dude literally just got into an ambulance and you crack a joke the minute he leaves?
Hell yeah, they don't give a shit.
Oh, fuck. Nah, give me 5 minutes to recuperate first.
We were cracking jokes about the guy that had a heart attack at Carmichael, like, as soon as he got taken out.
I was cracking jokes about the Parkland school shooting.
Oh, dude, that's not cool! That's not cool! No, old people dying is fine. It's natural. That's what happens. Kids getting shot is not.
Hey, abortion is abortion, even if they're 15 years old.
What?
It's okay. It's okay.
You gave me the most serious look when you were like, dude, and I was like, did I do something wrong? Oh my god. So anyways.
Yeah. getting back to it. We have
how the fuck did we go off on that?
That's fine.
It's who cares.
We have to cover someone else's tracks. In episode 83, we didn't get to finish what we were reading in that episode, and that's just because... Wait, did I even introduce you yet? That was the last recording.
Oh, shit.
I didn't even introduce you yet.
20 minutes and you didn't introduce
me. I mean, people have to know at this point.
They know who I am.
Yeah, I'm here...
They hear that dumb fucking voice and they're like, I'm turning off this episode.
This is Lots of Pasta, episode 85, and this is with Disco Dracula. And we're here covering for... Well, not necessarily covering. We're finishing. We're, those other dudes, they're quitters, you know? They got tired real quick, and they were like, we want to go home. So I was like, who would respect this material? Disco Dracula. So, in this episode, we're going to start with some short stories. We're going to finish what happened in episode 83, where we covered the holiest of holies, the scariest of scaries, the spoopiest of spoops. The first 3 parts of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark by Alvin Schwartz. So we're here to start from part 4 of the book, and we kind of went through the art a little bit, and we relived some
good memories.
Some good nostalgia, and I just wanted to clarify that, like, Bunch of Baby Ducks didn't remember anything about the book other than the pictures. He remembers borrowing the book from the library and just looking at the pictures. Skellybones, surprisingly, didn't even know about these books. Not one of the 3. At least one person,
very shocking.
Picks up one of the books at some point in their elementary.
It's intriguing.
But you said
a lot about it.
But you said Skellybones didn't go to our elementary district. Correct. So that might explain that. It's all about accessibility at that age.
Yeah.
I thought I could hide anything from my parents as long as they weren't, like, rifling through my shit. So I would rent that book, and I would just keep it in my backpack and carry my backpack to my room, and then I would, like, read it up there, and I would hide it under my pillow.
Like porn.
Yeah. Scary Stories were my porn when I was in 3rd grade.
It's the best kind of porn.
Prepubescent spoops rustled me jimmies. So, we're gonna just dive right in if my computer doesn't crash again.
Maybe we should save this.
Yeah, let's pause and save.
Pause and save, and
let's
that
pause
way
and
if it
save.
does...
I doubt it's gonna crash again.
Yeah,
that's
a bright white
It
screen.
seemed like a Java thing.
You're a Java thing.
I can be. I've actually recently been drinking coffee.
Coffee's good.
Yeah, coffee's good, and it's good for your bowels, too.
Mm-hmm. Cleans you right out.
I started drinking coffee. Mm-hmm. I started going to the gym at least 3 days a week. Mm-hmm. And
good
I'm eating lots of vegetables.
Vegetables are good.
I'm sweating a lot more.
That's okay.
It's making me
It's making your fat cry.
It's making me... my acne has grown out of control because I'm dirtier.
That's okay.
I need to get clean.
It's called shower daily.
Pure. I do shower daily. I actually think I overshower.
Maybe that's why then.
Yeah.
It could be.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Your pores, body, man. My pores are screaming out.
The human body is a...
I just noticed that ever since I started going to the gym, I've been popping up in acne all over the fucking place.
I thought you were going to say popping pills, and I was like, do we need to have a talk
I've been popping pills.
Off mic?
Well, supplements.
Well, yeah, that's fine.
Vitamins. Yeah. Or, as the British say, vitamins.
Vitamins.
Fuckheads.
So, learn how to talk.
I mean, they have some things right.
Yeah.
Like,
biscuits.
Fanny pack over there. It's still fanny pack, but it means vagina.
Oh.
Because it's the fanny.
And they pronounce buoy as boy.
Boy.
Because that's how it's spelled. Boy.
You gotta swim within the boys.
Yeah.
Swim in the boys.
Don't touch those big boys in the water. Don't go near
Be
those
careful
big
around
boys.
the boys.
Alright, we gotta fucking... Alright.
So we're still on Scary Stories Part 1, and then after we finish this, I got some surprise stories that we're going to dive into. Similar vein of short stories about spoopy things. So, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, Book 1, Part 4, Other Dangers. Most of the scary stories in this book have been passed down over the years, but the ones in this chapter have been told only in recent times. They are stories that young people often tell about dangers we face in our lives today.
Do not say anything
Ain't that just the way?
Ain't that just the way? Fucking love Over the Garden Wall.
What were you gonna say? Don't say anything about
Parkland.
Oh, no. Assault rifles. Yeah. So, we,
That wouldn't necessarily be wrong in this case.
So, knowing the stories we're about to cover, because among them are Babysitter, Hook, and High Beams, these things inspired creepypasta.
Ooh.
This was the creepypasta before internet. This book, essentially this book series, is the creepypasta because they're mostly hearsay, they're folklores, legends, urban legends, and sometimes even poems, or as we covered last episode, raps. So let's see what the first one is.
The Hook.
It's The Hook. Do you want to read The Hook?
Sure. I'll read The Hook. The Hooky Hook. Hooky 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 Hook. Looky, I got hooky. Did you like my Hook reference?
Roofy. Oh. I also like to do the fat kid voice sometimes, which is Peter. Do you remember your mother, Peter? Peter.
It's his face when he says it too.
Do you remember your mother?
He has such a chubby little face.
I remember my mother.
Did you ever see Pan? That fucking shit show of a movie? That was a bad movie.
I also liked Toulouse in Hook, because he's all about his marbles. I've lost my marbles. Have you seen my marbles?
He gets it back.
Oh, my marbles. He's talking about his testicles.
Yeah. His balls. He got his balls back.
They just make noises under the fucking... All he wears in that movie is pajamas, I believe. Senility. The Hook.
Donald and Sarah went to the movies. Then they went for a ride in Donald's car. They parked up on a hill at the edge of town. From there, they could see the lights up and down the valley.
This is what you used to do with the girls.
Yeah, all two of them. Donald turned on the radio and found some music, but an announcer broke in with the news bulletin. I remember the story. Okay,
I'm surprised you didn't.
I can't put them together with the titles. As soon as I started reading them, boom, popped them back in my head. I know. A murderer had escaped from a state prison. He was armed with a knife and he was headed south on foot. His left hand was missing. In its place, he wore a hook. Let's roll up the windows and lock the doors, said Sarah. That's a good idea, said Donald. That prison isn't too far away, said Sarah. Maybe we should really go home. But it's only 10 o'clock, said Donald. I don't care what time it is, she said. I want to go home. Look, Sarah, said Donald. He's not going to climb all the way up here. Why would he do that? Even if he did, all the doors are locked. How could he get in? Donald, he could take that hook and break through a window and open a door, she said. I'm scared. I want to go home. Donald was annoyed. Girls are always afraid of something, he said. Alright, rightfully so. You're going to get fucking murdered. You know, there's...
Just think of the Zodiac Killer, man.
This dude just wants to fucking
if
wet
these
his
stories are from the 90s, then think about the fucking Zodiac Killer. That's literally his MO. People alone in a car at the top of a fucking hill, away from civilization, and he would literally shoot them in the fucking face.
As he started the car, Sarah thought she heard someone or something scratching at her door. Did you hear that? She asked as they roared away. It sounded like somebody was trying to get in. Oh, sure, said Donald. Soon they got to her house. Would you like to come in and have some cocoa? She asked. Fucking cocoa?
Fucking love cocoa.
Who doesn't love cocoa? You don't like cocoa? Get the fuck out of here.
She's almost like making up for like having to drive her home. She's like, come inside, touch my vagina.
Yeah. While I make some cocoa. There, he's getting that cocoa. Would you like to come in and have some cocoa? She asked. No, he said. I've got to go home. You go in when a girl offers you cocoa. I don't care how tired you are. He went around to the other side of the car to let her out. Hanging on the door handle was a hook.
So Sarah was wrong. She didn't. The killer didn't break the window with his hook. He politely tried opening the door first.
And then they just pulled his fucking hook off.
And they just drove away, and he was just like, "Oh, typical."
Who's the real assholes in the story?
Actually, let me pack another one.
I think Donald.
If I can fucking see.
Donald is the real asshole.
We have mood lighting. Natural. It's just to assist with the classicness of these stories. Because, you know, you gotta go to this place when you're reading scary stories to tell in the dark. You actually gotta read them in the dark. So many other times in this show, we just kind of bullshit away through what is probably a terrifying story to be reading on your computer in the middle of the night. But all of our lights are on. So, you know, we gotta get theatrical sometimes. Just fill in a bowl. Just fill in...
Dance break. Disco
Dracula. This is quite
break.
Literally a Disco Dracula dance break.
Disco Dracula's getting his dancing legs on, and they're getting tired. Getting very fucking tired. He hasn't danced in a while. He's out of shape.
It has been...
He's not out of shape.
It has been 24 episodes.
It's been a while. Might be.
No, it's not. It's honestly not years when I lock us out of the house for 3 hours.
That sucked. That was just a shitty week, and that was just the icing on the fucking cake. It really was.
It was diarrhea icing.
It was literally like
sandwich.
You couldn't get in, and I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense. It's a shitty week. Let's just top this off with getting locked out of the house. I can't feel my toes. Couldn't feel my toesies. You know what though? I slept like a fucking baby that night.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I bet that weed helped. We were smoking Gorilla Glue last week. That was the strain of choice. Wow, the candlelight is so... when you lit that was such a cool... Are you afraid of the dark atmosphere we were in? So what... You remembered the hook the minute you started it.
Yeah.
That's a pretty go-to campfire story.
Yeah.
What's next?
This could also be the hook.
Yeah, that was a hanger. I am going to read The White Satin Evening Gown.
Or Satan.
Let me see if I remember this one correctly. A young man invited a young woman. Let me start that over again. Oh, I also wanted to remark on how you can hear the wind outside, and how today there was a blizzard that pretty much gave us overcast and rain clouds all day. And
like 60 mile per hour
all
winds.
Snow sucked, and the wind is intense. So it is a particular it is a particularly spoopy night.
Yeah, down power lines everywhere, down trees everywhere.
Yeah. Yep. Let's start this over again. The White Satin Evening Gown. A young man invited a young woman to a formal dance, but she was very poor. She could not afford to buy the evening gown she needed for such an occasion, so she sold herself on the street.
Oh, don't say that.
That is what happened back then, so like...
I know, but don't...
Maybe you can rent a dress, her mother said. So she went to a pawn shop not far from where she lived. There she found a white satin evening gown in her size. She looked lovely in it, and she was able to rent it for very little.
Oh, good for her.
When she arrived at the dance with her friend, she was so attractive. Everyone wanted to meet her. She danced again and again, and was having a wonderful time. But then she began to feel dizzy and faint, and she asked her friend to take her home. I think I have danced too much, she told him.
Just like Disco Dracula.
Yeah, quite. When she got home, she lay down on her bed. The next morning, her mother found that her daughter had died.
Oh my god.
The doctor did not understand what had caused her death, so he had the coroner perform an autopsy. The coroner found that she had been poisoned by embalming fluid.
Fuck.
It had stopped her blood from flowing. There were traces of the fluid on her dress. She decided it had entered her skin when she perspired while she was dancing.
Oh my god, so she really
The
danced too
pawnbroker said he bought the dress from an undertaker's helper. It had been used in a funeral for another young woman, and the helper had stolen it just before she was buried.
Holy shit, that's intense.
You get another classic.
High beams. I feel like I remember this one.
High beams is a fucking classic.
That store or that illustration looked very, very.
We read High
familiar.
Beams, the creepypasta version, in episode 32, and I believe it's Terry the Tickler. But anyway, High Beams.
High beams. The girl driving the old blue sedan was a senior at the high school. She lived on a farm about 8 miles away and used the car to drive back and forth. She had driven into town that night to see a basketball game. Now she was on her way home. As she pulled away from the school, she noticed a red pickup truck follow her out of the parking lot. A few minutes later, the truck was still behind her. I guess we're going in the same direction, she thought. She began to watch the truck in her mirror. When she changed her speed, the driver of the truck changed his speed. When she passed a car, so did he. Then he turned on his high beams, flooding her car with light. He left them on for almost a minute. He probably wants to pass me, she thought, but she was becoming uneasy. Usually she drove home over a back road. Not too many people went that way, but when she turned onto that road, so did the truck. I've got to get away from him, she thought, so she began to drive faster. Then he turned his high beams on again. After a minute, he turned them off. Then he turned them on again and off again. I remember the story.
Only now.
Yeah. Yeah. She drove even faster, but the truck driver stayed right behind her. Then he turned on his high beams on again. Once more, her car was ablaze with light. What is he doing? She wondered. What does he want? Then he turned them off again. But a minute later, he had them on again, and he left them on. At last, she pulled into her driveway, and the truck pulled in right behind her. She jumped from the car and ran to the house. "Call the police!" she screamed at her father. Out in the driveway, she could see the driver of the truck. He had a gun in his hand. When the police arrived, they started to arrest him, but he pointed to the girl's car. "You don't want me," he said. "You want him." Crouched behind the driver's seat, there was a man with a knife. As the driver of the truck explained it, the man slipped into the girl's car just before she left the school. He saw it happen, but there was no way he could stop it. He thought about getting the police, but he was afraid to leave her, so he followed the car. Each time the man in the back seat reached up to overpower her, the driver of the truck turned on his high beams. Then the man dropped down, afraid that someone might see him. Goddamn terrifying.
That story, ever since I was a child, is a reason I check back seats before I drive a car.
Same fucking here, dude.
That and, Zombieland. I think ever since Zombieland, I decided that, like, I would fail step 2, so I'd have to make sure that, like, all my other steps are intact.
Mm-hmm.
Step 2 is cardio. Anyway.
You're getting there.
I am getting there.
Good.
Ooh, this is a good one. This is one of my favorites. This is The Babysitter. It was 9 o'clock in the evening. Everybody was sitting on the couch in front of the TV. There was Dick, Brian, Jenny, and Doreen, the babysitter. The telephone rang.
That's the end of the story.
"Maybe it's your mother," said Doreen. "Fuck off, Doreen," said everyone else. She picked up the phone. Before she could say a word, a man laughed hysterically and hung up. "Who was it?" asked Dick. "Some nut," said Doreen.
Oh yeah, get that nut.
"What did I miss?" At 9:30, the telephone rang again. Doreen answered it. It was the man who called before. "I'll be there soon," he said, and he laughed and hung up. "Who was it?" the children asked. "Some crazy person," she said. About 10 o'clock, the phone rang again. Jenny got to it first. "Hello?" she said. It was the same man. 1 more hour, he said, and he laughed and hung up. He said 1 more hour. What did that mean? Asked Jenny. Don't worry, said Doreen. It's somebody fooling around. I'm scared, said Jenny. About 10:30, the telephone rang once more. When Doreen picked up, the man said, pretty soon now, and he laughed. Why are you doing this? Doreen screamed. Why are you doing this? And he hung up. Fuck you. Was it that guy again? Asked Brian. Yeah, said Doreen. I'm going to call the operator and complain. The operator told her to call back again if it happened, and she would try to trace the call. At 11 o'clock, the telephone rang again. Doreen answered it. Very soon now, the man said, and he laughed and hung up. Doreen called the operator. Almost at once, she called back. That person is calling from a telephone upstairs. You better leave. I'll get the police. I mean, she wouldn't know where in the house. No. I always thought the calls coming from inside the house was from this story and not from the movie.
When a stranger calls?
Yes. Just then, a door upstairs opened. A man they had never seen before started down the stairs toward them. As they ran from the house, he was smiling in a very strange way. A few minutes later, the police found him there and arrested him. Well, what happened in those few minutes? Did he just kind of talk to them? Hello.
They were probably just running.
I told you. Now we can start our interview.
That's it.
Oh, we got more stories.
No, I mean, like, that's a first story.
That was the end of that. We're back at... So, I hope people are ready for that. It's another section with surprise endings.
Oh, boy.
This chapter has the same title as the first chapter, but the stories in the first chapter, never mind, are meant to scare you. The ones in this chapter are meant to make you laugh.
Oh, hot dog! What a fucking guy!
What a guy!
Poop yourself, now piss yourself.
Look at that guy. They
Smiling
call him
Joe.
The Viper.
I think he's called Smiling Joe.
Okay.
A widow lived alone on the top floor of an apartment house. One morning, her telephone rang. Hello? She said. This is the Viper, a man said. I'm coming up. Somebody is fooling around, she thought, and hung up. Half hour later, the telephone rang again. It was the same man. It's the Viper, he said. I'll be up soon.
Viper sounds like a cool dude.
Yeah.
What's he bringing me?
Dude, a Viper. The widow didn't know what to think, but she was getting frightened. Once more, the telephone rang. Again, it was the Viper. I'm coming up now, he said. She quickly called the police. They said they would be right over. When the doorbell rang, she sighed with relief. They are here, she thought. But then, when she opened the door, there stood a little old man with a bucket and a cloth. I am the Viper, he said. I wish to wash and wipe the windows. Get it!
Got him.
He was the Viper.
This next one is called The Attic. A man named Rupert lived with his dog in a house deep in the woods. Rupert was a hunter and a trapper. The dog was a big German shepherd named Sam. Rupert had raised Sam from a pup. Almost every morning, Rupert went hunting, and Sam stayed behind and guarded the house. One morning, as Rupert was checking his traps, he got the feeling that something was wrong at home. He hurried back as fast as he could, but when he got there, he found that Sam was missing. He searched the house and the woods nearby, but Sam was nowhere to be seen. He called and he called, but the dog did not answer. For days, Rupert looked for Sam, but he could find no trace of him. Finally, he gave up and went back to his work. But one morning, he heard something moving in the attic. He picked up his gun. Then he thought, I'd better be quiet about this. So he took off his boots, and in his bare feet he began to climb the attic stairs. He slowly took one step, then another, until at last he reached the attic door. He stood outside listening, but he didn't hear a thing. Then he opened the door, and... At this point, the storyteller stops as if he was finished. Then usually somebody will ask, why did Rupert scream? The storyteller replies, you'd scream too if you stepped on a nail in your bare feet. And then everyone crucified him. That was the story of why Jesus was killed.
You actually startled me with that scream.
Yeah, man. Like, we gotta scream in each other's faces when it says "ah" in all caps.
My heart is
Ooh, you get to read the slithery D.
My heart is beating really quick right now.
Yeah, man.
Leave me go.
I thought that was Where the Wild Things Are at first. This is fun. Here it is, slithery D.
I'm not rhyming this. Well, I'm not rapping this.
You are a slithery D. You are Disco D. The slitheriest.
The slithery of D's. The slithery D, he came out of the sea. He ate all the others, but he didn't eat me. The slithery D, he came out of the sea. He ate all the others, but he didn't eat slurp.
Such a fun little story that you told there. Oh, that was good. How that dead man danced. What? What? It's just a picture? Oh, well, that was my story.
That's your story.
Anyway, here's Aaron Kelly's bones.
No, that's yours. I'm not gonna make that your story.
How that dead man danced.
The end.
And there's like an illustration of like a dude just...
But he's missing an arm. His arm
fell off. Yeah. And
he got big old toes.
His ankles are broken.
Look at that side of that toe. Go back up. Look at that side of that toe. Is that whole thing?
I think it's coming off.
Whatever, man. What a toe.
Aaron Kelly's bones. Aaron Kelly was dead. They bought him a coffin and had a funeral and buried him. But that night, he got out of his coffin and he came home. His family was sitting around the fire when he walked in. He sat down next to his widow and he said, "What's going on? Y'all act like somebody died. Who's dead?" His widow said, "You are." "I don't feel dead," he said. "I feel fine." "You don't look fine," his widow said. "You look dead. You'd better get back to the grave where you belong." "I'm not going back to the grave until I feel dead," he said. Since Aaron wouldn't go back, his widow couldn't collect his life insurance. Without that, she couldn't pay for the coffin, and the undertaker said he would take it back. Aaron didn't care. He just sat by the fire, rocking in a chair and warming his hands and feet. But his joints were dry, and his back was stiff, and every time he moved, he creaked and cracked. One night, the best fiddler in town came to court the widow. Since Aaron was dead, the fiddler wanted to marry her. The two of them sat on one side of the fire, and Aaron sat on the other side, creaking and cracking. "How long do we have to put up with this dead corpse?" the widow asked. "Something must be done," the fiddler said. "This isn't very jolly," Aaron said. "Let's dance." And that's what the illustration is from. The fiddler got out his fiddle and began to play. Aaron stretched himself, shook himself, got up, took a step or two, and began to dance. With his old bones rattling and his yellow teeth snapping and his bald head wagging and his arms flip-flopping around, and around he went. With his long legs clicking and his knee bows knocking, he skipped and pranced around the room. How that dead man danced! But pretty soon, a bone worked loose and he fell to the floor. "Look at that!" said the fiddler. "Play faster!" said the widow. The fiddler played faster. Crickety-crack! Down and back! Dead man went hopping, and his dry bones kept rapping. This way, that way, the pieces just kept popping.
Oh my god.
Play, man, play! Cried the widow. The fiddler fiddled, and dead Aaron danced. Then Aaron fell apart, collapsed into a pile of bones. All except his bald head bone that grinned at the fiddler, cracked its teeth, and kept dancing.
Just head fucking flopping around.
Look at that! Groaned the fiddler. Play louder! Cried the widow. Ho ho! Said the head bone. Ain't we having fun? The fiddler couldn't stand it. Widow, he said, I'm going home. And he never came back. The family gathered up Aaron's bones, put them back in the coffin. They mixed them up so he couldn't fit them together. After that, Aaron stayed in his grave. But his widow never did get married again. Aaron had seen to that. The guy simply did not come back the next day. Aw, damn, you get to read Wait Till Martin Comes.
You can read this if you want.
I love this story.
You can read it.
This is a fun one.
Who
knows this one? I think Frowns does. If you weren't the one who brought this up, then it had to have been Frowns. Wait Till Martin Comes. You have to know this story.
I do know this.
You do. It was you who brought this up.
I think I think you brought it up to me.
An old man was out for a walk when a storm came up. He looked for a place to take shelter. Soon he came to an old house. He ran up on the porch and knocked on the door, but nobody answered. By now, rain was pouring down, thunder was booming, and lightning was flashing. So he tried the door. When he found it was unlocked, he went inside. Except for a pile of wooden boxes, the house was empty. He broke up some of the boxes and made a fire with them. Then he sat down in front of the fire and dried himself. It was so warm and cozy that he fell asleep. When he woke up, a black cat was sitting near the fire. It stared at him for a while. Then it purred. That's a nice cat, he thought, and he dozed off again. When he opened his eyes, there was a second cat in the room, but this one was as big as a wolf. It looked at him very closely, and it asked, Shall we do it now? No, said the other cat. Let's wait till Martin comes. I must be dreaming, thought the old man. He closed his eyes again. Then he took another look. But now, there was a third cat in the room. And this one was as big as a tiger. It looked the old man over, and it asked, Shall we do it now? No, said the others. Let's wait till Martin comes. The old man jumped up, jumped out the window, and started running. When Martin comes, you tell him I couldn't wait, he called. Oh, well, that's it. I remember it ending differently.
I thought it ended differently, too. I thought mine was like a small cat or a mouse or something.
Yeah.
This is why I let you read that one, because I want to read the Ghost with the Bloody Fingers.
You wanted to finish it off.
Yeah.
You like this one.
I do like this one. It's so fucking dumb.
This one you remembered, you said. Or
yeah.
Vaguely. The Ghost with the Bloody Fingers.
A businessman arrived at the hotel late one night and asked for a room. The room clerk told him the hotel was all filled up. There was only one empty room, he said, but we don't rent that one because it is haunted. I'll take it, said the businessman. I don't believe in ghosts. The man went up to the room, he unpacked his things, and he went to bed. As soon as he did, a ghost came out of the closet. Its fingers were bleeding, and it was moaning, bloody fingers, bloody fingers. When the man saw the ghost, he grabbed his things and ran. The next night, a woman arrived very late. Again, all the rooms were taken except the haunted room. I'll sleep there, she said. I'm not afraid of ghosts. As soon as she got into bed, the ghost came out of the closet. Its fingers still were bleeding. It still was moaning, bloody fingers, bloody fingers. And the woman took one look and ran. A week later, another guest arrived very late. He also took the haunted room. After he unpacked, he got out his guitar and he began to play. Soon the ghost appeared. As before, its fingers were bleeding, and it was moaning, bloody fingers, bloody fingers. The man paid no attention. He just kept strumming his guitar. but the ghost kept moaning, and its fingers kept bleeding. Finally, the guitar player looked up. "Cool it, man," he said. "Get yourself a Band-Aid." Yeah!
That's the end of the fucking book.
Yeah!
That's fun.
Get yourself a Band-Aid, man. I just spit on your arm, I think.
Get yourself a fucking Band-Aid. Yeah. Wise words.
Get yourself
Wiser words have never been spoken. So now we're going to switch gears just because I want to. I want to continue this.
Okay.
I want to give you a longer episode. We only have a couple things to read. Look at all the fucking stories. Look at all the fucking stories everyone can choose from. Look at all these fucking stories. Anyway. Bloody fingers.
Bloody fingers.
Bloody fingers. I'm going to start by reading something called The Day I Started Believing in Ghosts. We're gonna switch gears. We're gonna read ghost stories.
Why do you do this to me? I don't like
I
this.
knew you wouldn't want to read
Why
them.
can't we just play Mario
Dark,
Party
alone
now?
in my basement? Because we can read more ghost stories. I only have a couple of them. We'll get through them nice and quick.
How many are a couple?
I think 4.
That's not a couple, that's a few, asshole.
It's less than 20 pages. Which means it's like a half hour.
Our family home is famously haunted, oh boy. By famously, I mean it's mentioned in the town's historical records and kids under a certain age won't ring the doorbell on Halloween. That kind of thing. I'm 24 and I've lived here all my life, aside from college. Over the course of those years, I'd never seen anything out of the ordinary. My mom lived here for almost 70, though, and Dad for 50, and they claim they saw actual ghosts many times. Their parents, too, and so on. The house was built in 1729. Like most houses nearing their 300th birthday, it's had its share of problems. Still does. Obviously, it's undergone a ton of maintenance over the course of its life, but it was always patch-ups rather than overhauls. Therefore, it's drafty. Everything sags, the electrical system is awful, the plumbing system is even worse. To top it off, all those things make some type of noise. Whistling, creaking, humming, groaning, etc. Oh, good, so like your basement. To a superstitious person, it would be easy for them to associate any number of those things with the paranormal. Members of my family, for example, simply think all those natural explanations aren't good enough. Unlike most hauntings, the ghost we have isn't a single recurring entity. The best Mom was able to explain from what she'd seen was this. She'd be doing stuff around the house and something would catch her eye. She'd turn and look, and there'd be the ghostly image of someone who used to live in the house. Sometimes she knew who it was, sometimes she didn't. They would be going about their daily routines, entirely oblivious to the fact that Mom was watching. One time, when Mom was getting out of the shower, she saw the ghost of her grandfather sitting on the toilet, reading the newspaper while her grandmother brushed her teeth. The moment she yelped with surprise, they disappeared. I was home during my summer break after my first year in college when Dad died. It was as devastating to Mom and me as anyone would expect. After I returned to school, I started getting emails from Mom talking about how she'd seen Dad around the house. All the sightings were in line with the kind of things she told me about in the past, but I started to worry about the frequency of the reports from her. She was claiming to see him a couple of times a week. Before his death, they'd only seen previous residents of the house once every few years. To make matters worse, it seemed like he was scaring her. Over Christmas break, I convinced her to see a therapist. She began having weekly sessions, which did very little to help with her stress. Her sightings of Dad occurred as frequently as ever. This went on for years. Holy shit, that's nuts. Following graduation, I moved back home. I got a job at a local accounting firm and started paying off my student loans. Living rent-free with Mom was going to make that process go by much faster. I had another reason for living there too. Mom's health was in decline. She'd get sick often and spend most of her time wandering aimlessly around the house or sitting in Dad's old recliner, watching television. I worried about her being alone, so when I wasn't at work, I made it a point to stay at home. I figured it was the least I could do. That said, I didn't want to spend all my time sitting around. I figured since I'd be inheriting the house at some point, I could get some work done and make it feel a little less, well, ancient. There was plenty of old stuff in rooms no one visited that could be brought up to the attic and potentially sold, so I took my time after work and on weekends to deal with it. I hauled lamps and record players and shoeboxes filled with knickknacks up the narrow steps. Nip-naps. Ever since I was old enough to climb the stairs to reach the attic, I'd hated it. It was always hot and stuffy and incredibly dusty, and now that I was filling it with more and more junk, the stuffiness only intensified. It was like my old attic. Great, I like the way this is going. I've been claustrophobic for as long as I could remember. No one else in the family suffered from it, so it appeared to be my own special cross to bear. I did my best to ignore it during my frequent trips up there to drop stuff off, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't go as fast as I could to get back down those steps to the cool and spacious second floor. On the morning of Mom's 70th birthday, I got up early to make her breakfast in bed. French toast, fried eggs, and spicy sausage. I tiptoed up the stairs with the tray, carefully opened the door, and walked in. This is when, the ghost dad is just banging the fucking mom. Happy birthday, dude. She was staring at his mom, going to town with the vibrator. She was staring at the ceiling with a look of terror on her face. Her breathing was labored. I left the tray on the dresser and rushed over, asking her what was wrong. She didn't answer. Her wide eyes locked on mine. I reached in my pocket for my phone to call 911. She grabbed my arm in a grip tighter than I thought her frail body could produce. Jeanette, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, please. I had no idea what she was talking about. I stretched my other arm to get my phone from my jeans pocket, but Mom grabbed that one too. I struggled to get loose while asking over and over what happened, what was wrong. She kept talking over me. We needed money. He made me, Jeanette. The grip on my arms loosened and Mom's labored breathing slowed, then stopped. I finally dialed 911, but it was too late. I checked her pulse. Nothing. I confirmed what I knew was a useless attempt at CPR. Gross. I stared at her and cried until the ambulance arrived.
It's it's not bad enough that your mom just died in front of you, but you had to make out.
Tongue and all. I went through the funeral.
It's he said he checked the pulse. What?
Listen, you try.
Ugh.
I went through the funeral preparations, service, and beer. Oh my god. I went through the funeral. Oh my fucking god! I cannot say funeral. I went through the funeral preparations, service, and burial in a fog of misery and confusion. Months went by, and while my mourning period had tapered off, what Mom told me as she died hung like a low cloud over my day-to-day activities. Even though I'd started therapy to help cope with everything I was dealing with, those few sentences that plagued me. I'd sit in a house alone while the words danced in my head. I realized I had to move away. I had to sell the house and go away if I wanted to get the closure I so desperately needed. All the stuff I'd brought to the attic needed to go. When Mom was alive, I kept it because I thought we could have a tag sale at some point, and she could tell me what to sell and what should be kept for sentimental purposes. Nothing had sentiment anymore. It all had to go. I rented a dumpster and had it delivered in the front yard, and I got to work bringing it all down. It was unbearably hot August. The attic must have been 120 degrees, and the process of moving all the junk was kicking up a lot of dust. I cursed myself for not having a mask or anything, but I was on autopilot to get it all down and out as quickly as possible. I ignored my claustrophobia as best as I could, and in the space of 3 days, got the vast majority of the stuff from the attic into the dumpster. Around noon on the fourth day, sweat was pouring down my dusty, filthy body as I worked to take the last few boxes out. I got into old stuff that had been there for as long as I could remember, lots of Dad's winter clothes and high school yearbooks and stuff. It was by far the dustiest part of the attic. My chest burned and clumps of fuzz floated through the air like volcanic ash. I became acutely aware of my breathing and started to feel dizzy. I felt consumed by the dry heat and could swear the room was getting smaller as I stumbled toward the last of the boxes. I lost my footing and fell face first into a pile of boxes in the corner. They crashed to the floor and one split open, spilling its contents. My head hit the ground and I gasped, gulping dust into my throat. I coughed and hacked up gobs of dust-loaded snot.
Gross.
The walls felt like they were squeezing my shoulders, and I felt the ceiling, despite being 6 feet above my head, pushing me into the dusty floor. Something flashed in the corner of my eye. I whirled around in a thick string of saliva hanging from my lips, whipping around and slapping the side of my face. The ghostly figure of a woman stood in the middle of the room with a camcorder on her shoulder. It looked like she was crying. I shrieked and scrambled like a crab to get away. The figure didn't respond to my noise and movements. It just kept sobbing and pointing the camcorder. I realized it was my young mother. While the walls and ceiling spun ever closer to me and dust filled my tongue and the back of my throat, I turned around and looked in the direction the camera was recording. My young father was lying on his belly on the filthy floor, pinned underneath him, open mouth, struggling with all her might, and gasping lungful after lungful of dust, was a girl no older than 4. Oh my god. I blinked 3 times in rapid succession, and disbelief, horror, and revulsion swept through me. The images disappeared. In their place were the contents of the box that split open. VHS tapes and a broken camcorder.
Fucking painful.
Holy shit.
That hurt. And you know what? I didn't say what source it was from. It's from Unsettling Stories. No fucking, like, no shit that one hurt. Because they always hurt. Their stories are painful. But I loved it. I thought it was great.
Oh my god. Oh god.
This one I thought you would like because it's a pretty cool title. I once asked a famous ghost hunter what his scariest moment was.
Great.
And this
Great.
was his story.
Great.
Here on Ghost Hunters. Anyway, back when I was in college, the Student Campus Activity Council hired a famous ghost hunter to come speak at our school. I've always loved the paranormal, so I left my skeptical boyfriend behind in his dorm and hightailed it over to the auditorium. The ghost hunter was someone I'd never heard of, but he had an impressive background and seemed to have several things in the works at the time. This was in 2005. I think he actually might have a TV show now. He was a man of small stature, with a little white professor's beard and a receding hairline, but the way he spoke about the afterlife was fascinating. You could tell he truly believed what he claimed to see. Either that, or he's hell of a salesman. He had us hanging on every word. We watched some interesting video clips of his investigations. He had a nice collection of photos and scary stories to go with them. I remember one about a haunted doll that he said moved freely around the room of the other person who had picked it up at a flea market, just not when anyone was around to witness it. Sounds like bullshit. Towards the end, he opened up the floor for questions. There were your typical dumbass college kid questions. Have you ever seen someone's head spin around? Like The Exorcist? Yeah. Stuff like that. And a few that were actually pretty interesting. I decided I wasn't going to let this opportunity to speak to someone so apparently revered in the field of the supernatural slip away, so I raised my hand. Ghost Hunter spotted me, pointed and smiled. Yes, you, the girl in the white shirt. Yeah, hi, I said. And I know I sounded nervous because I felt so dumb for sounding so nervous. I was just wondering, what's the scariest thing you can remember from your career as a ghost hunter? I was halfway back in the auditorium, quite a distance from the stage, but I saw his face fall. I know I did. Well, he said, forcing a tight little laugh. It was forced, I know it was. There are so many scary moments to recall. They tend to pop up quite often when you're in my line of work. This got a little chuckle from the audience. I suddenly felt pretty stupid for asking the question at all. He proceeded to tell some story about tracking a poltergeist in an abandoned elementary school and his flashlight failing. I remember because it really wasn't very scary. At least it didn't seem that way for someone who hunts ghosts for a living. He moved on from the story and answered a few more questions. He didn't look my way again. When it was over and everyone started to leave, I decided not to get stuck in the crush of students leaving through the front door. Feeling somewhat dejected, like I had done something wrong, I slipped out quietly of the theater and headed for my dorm. The ghost hunter was sitting outside on a bench near the bike rack smoking a cigarette. I ducked my head and tried to get by without him noticing. Hey kid. He took another drag and crushed the cigarette out on the cement bench beside him. Listen, I'm sorry, I remember blurting, feeling like a stupid little girl. I know my question was dumb. I wasn't trying to make fun of you or anything. He shook his head. He brushed the ashes off the bench. He patted the space beside him, inviting me to sit. I hesitated. This could definitely be a case of stranger danger, just like they taught in the intro to university classes, then sat down. Keeping a healthy distance between us, he was old, I was young, I could probably outrun the guy, or who knows, maybe I was just as stupid as I felt. I didn't tell the truth, the ghost hunter said. His face looked much older close up, the wrinkles deeper, the confident salesman aura had faded from him, leaving behind a man in his 60s who had clearly seen a lot of things. That story I told, it wasn't the scariest moment of my career. I know, I remember saying. He nodded, as though he had known I knew. This is the scariest moment of my career, he said, and this is what he told me. It was the 1970s. I was a much younger man. I hadn't reached success in the paranormal industry quite yet, and was left to pick up the scraps that the pros didn't want. Usually, they were schizophrenics, whose broken minds tricked them into believing there were phantoms after them, or children playing pranks on gullible and concerned members of the neighborhood. If anything, it was a simple cleansing of the home with sage, and off I went. When I first got the call, I was ecstatic. What the client was describing appeared to be a full-blown demonic haunting, complete with physical manifestations, possession, and multiple witnesses. It was the break I was searching for. It was the break I needed. The only detail that truly worried me was their teenage son. The person they claimed to be suffering from possession had become violent with members of his family. Up until recently, he'd only acted out of character, moody. However, a week prior, he had tried to rape his older female cousin. Escalated very quickly. She was shaken, but mostly unharmed.
Okay.
The family sent her to live elsewhere until it could all be figured out. Therefore, when I headed out to their home, I made sure to arrive fully prepared. I brought holy water, crucifixes, sage, and, just for good measure, a small loaded handgun. I knew it wouldn't come to that, but something about the mother's frantic tone over the phone told me it was just a good idea. I wish I could say the visit itself was exciting. Unfortunately, from the moment I pulled into the driveway of the beautiful, remodeled Victorian, all activity seemed to stop. That is, if it was ever there to begin with. I spent 2 weeks investigating the home. I used equipment considered very technologically advanced for the era. I studied energy waves. I interviewed the son whose family claimed to be possessed, when in fact he just seemed to be depressed. Perhaps psychologically disturbed. I recommended a therapist, a renowned child psychologist who was famous for his work with violent young men. On my last day in the house, they took him into the city for treatment. His parents returned shortly before midnight, retiring warily to their bedroom, leaving me alone in the kitchen to go over my findings. There was nothing to be said, and I knew it. Everything they described could be written off to the hysterics of a family who couldn't admit their son was in desperate need of medical attention. Everything, that is, except for the drains in the floor. Upon touring the home, I was impressed with how up-to-date it had been. It was clearly from the early 1900s and kept in immaculate condition. The woodwork and character of the house was carefully preserved, as if it was given necessary updates, like modern plumbing and electricity. The basement was the only area that seemed stuck in time. Of course. The walls were a clammy stone that was prone to gathering moisture, leaving it unfit to store anything vulnerable to spiders or mold. The family had left it empty for this reason, and while it certainly felt very spooky to spend any amount of time in the windowless room with a single hanging light and its vast cement floors, I never recorded anything of note in this area. However, there was one thing I couldn't understand. Given the approximate time the home had been built and its presence in the residential neighborhood, there was simply no accounting for the 4 large slotted drains set in the cold concrete floor. As I sat alone in the kitchen, poring over my meager findings, trying to find meaning in all these words, I heard something. It was only a little sound at first, and so I ignored it, but then it came again, louder this time. There was a steep spiral staircase that led to the 2nd floor, winding up from the corner of the small kitchen, and it was where the noise seemed to be coming from. Assuming it was simply one of the homeowners restless after dropping their son off in an institution, I glanced up. It was coming down the stairs. I can't say walking, because that wasn't the case. It was just floating, isn't even the right word. Just coming down the stairs straight at me. It had no eyes, it had no face, and yet somehow I knew it was looking at me, right at me, into the very depths of my soul. And then it spoke. I'm not sure how it spoke. I don't think I actually heard anything, so perhaps it used some sort of telepathy. Either way, I can recall the words to this very day. You know what he did to us. I didn't think. I couldn't. I just ran. I abandoned my chair when I fled, scattering papers across the kitchen that claimed this house wasn't really haunted. It was all the hallucinations of a very sick boy. I left them there. Do you know how awful that is? I left those people in that house with that thing. I didn't stop driving for 30 miles, for God's sake. When I realized how far I'd gone, I finally pulled over and called the family from a payphone. They were the furthest thing from my mind when I saw it. All I could do was respond to the deep animal instinct to escape, to run out of that supposedly safe house with the tail between my legs. They moved, I think. I was unable to continue my investigation. In writing, I cited insufficient evidence, but I knew it was cowardice. I believe the house was leveled a few years later. I ended up doing my own research. Curiosity ate away at me with vicious little rat teeth as time went by, the accusation still ringing fresh in my ears. You know what he did to us. And eventually, yes, I did. Old newspaper clippings didn't tie the stories together, not necessarily, but I was able to piece something together out of the yellowed excerpts. At some point around the turn of the century, the house had been residence to a well-respected mortician. Unable to find a building in town to suit his needs, he said, he built his own home office space. It was a grand feat of architecture and a shining example of a true entrepreneur, a man pursuing the American dream of running his own business. Upstairs, the bedroom, mid-level, the funeral home. In the basement, a mortuary. I knew what the drains were for. Separately, decades later, another well-respected member of the local community was arrested under the suspicion of abuse of his professional position with moral cause. The newspaper didn't elaborate, probably due to the sensitive nature of the crimes, but his punishment was minor. After a brief stay in the local jail, the perpetrator stripped his home of all its value and left town, before trial, never to be seen again. It didn't take much to guess the connection. I suppose I don't know for sure, but the words of that thing still echo through my head to this day. You know what he did to us. There was a reason that mortician felt such a strong desire to build a house that contained his business to suit his needs. The things that were done to those bodies in that basement were unspeakable, but yes, I know. I know what he did to them. And it's because of this, coming face to face with the true nature of man in its darkest places, that the encounter with the faceless thing and it's the scariest moment of my career. Because now I know. I still remember his expression, the way all the color dropped out of him as he went on, the white hair of his beard barely distinguishable from his pale skin, the slump of his shoulders, the way his voice shook. I apologized. He waved me off. He left. I felt terrible. I still feel terrible for making him relive that moment. But as I grew up, as campus activities were replaced with bills and my own career, the ghost hunter fell from the forefront of my mind little by little. Until last week, when I moved in with my fiancé, when I took the boxes into the basement despite his warnings of spiders and mold, because there's a large, slotted drain in the center of the room. And I am so worried, so scared about what I might know.
That's crazy.
Hey, that's fun.
That's a good one.
That was fun.
Yeah, I like that.
Alright, so this is going to be your last story then. This is the Little Ghost. I think all 4 of these are from Unsettling Stories.
Great, good. I'm glad. Just so dead inside. When the little ghost first started coming to me, he whispered nice little things that made me feel good. You have pretty hands. I love how you do your nails. How did you get your skin to be so smooth? He stayed with me all day and all night. As the days went by, though, I must have done something to make the ghost angry. Instead of mawkish pleasantries, the messages grew negative. I've seen other girls with prettier hands. What happened to your nails? I'm sorry your skin looks so dry nowadays.
This is just going to be a depression thing about teenagers.
Probably. I started to get upset. I'd grown fond of the little ghost. Since he'd always been so positive, it was comforting. But once he started to get mean, I wondered what I'd done wrong. I didn't want my ghost to feel like I disappointed him. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, I saw the ghost in the mirror. He looked up at me as I brushed my teeth and said, with sadness in his voice, "Your cuticles are so ragged and ugly." I looked down at my hands. He was right. I hadn't been taking care of them at all since I started that art class. Bits of skin and hangnails sprouted from each cuticle. They were red and angry. "Can you get rid of them for me?" The ghost sounded so hopeful. I couldn't bear to make him feel like I wasn't the good person he initially believed me to be. What if he left? Grabbed the corner of a thick hangnail on the side of my left middle finger. I started to pull backward. It hurt terribly. The ghost, his eyes brimming with hope, told me I was doing such a great job. Even through the pain of what I was doing, I was overwhelmed by relief. I was finally doing something right. I kept working on the hangnail. After a little while, I pulled a thin strip from the side of my finger, up my hand and across my arm to the inside of my elbow. It stung terribly, but as tears of joy flooded from the ghost's eyes, I started to wonder if things were getting back to normal. Your hand is looking a tiny bit better, the ghost informed me. Maybe someday you can be pretty again. I spent the next hour tearing the skin and nails from my fingers. Even though they bled and I thought they looked terrible, the ghost smiled and assured me I had the hands of a beautiful angel. Through my tears, I smiled. As the days went by, I did what I could to make the ghost happy. Sometimes he'd get in a bad mood. Just the other night, he told me the skin on my lips was ugly and chapped. I pulled the chapped skin away. Some of it went pretty far up my cheeks before it tore. But it was okay. The ghost talked on and on about how kissable I'd become. My parents arrived at my apartment this morning. They hadn't said they were coming, but it was a nice surprise. It'd been a while. But when they saw my face and my hands, they were horrified. My mom sighed, "What happened to your beautiful face?" My dad, almost at the same time, exclaimed, "Oh my God, your hands are ruined!" Tears started to leak from my eyes. Off in the corner, my ghost sighed. "They're the ones who makes us so sad, aren't they?" I agreed. 10 minutes later, as I worked to saw their bodies into small parts, I asked the ghost if he'd be happier now that they weren't around. No answer. I turned around to see if he was listening. The little ghost was gone. This bitch just killed her fucking parents.
See, body mutilation on the scale of like Black Swan or the degloving in Gerald's game really skeeves me the fuck out.
Oh no, I'm fine with it.
I don't like that.
How about Antichrist?
Oh, I didn't like that either.
Scissors to the clit.
Ew.
Rock to the dick.
Yeah, I like the rock to the dick part.
Rock to the dick, scissors to the clit, cum blood.
This is gonna be the last story. This is called We're All Smiling.
Yeah, sure we are. Mario Party soon.
Yeah, man. Oh, you're funny. The overly wide, grinning mouth is a horror cliche. It's a trope, albeit a successful one, that's wormed its way into scary stories from around the world. So ubiquitous is its inclusion that it's taken on a legendary status. It feels like something that's always been around to scare people, right? In 1844, one of the first serial killers in Connecticut began a rampage. Little was known about the killers, save for the signature technique of disfiguration. While the victims were alive, they were amputated their cheeks. When the bodies were eventually found, their toothy skeletal smiles became fodder for nightmares, rumors, and legends. The killer was never captured. Starting in 2012, local Connecticut message boards and forums started to feature messages and questions about the ghosts. There's a town in Connecticut called Monroe. It is infested with hauntings. 2 cemeteries, Union and Sepney, are sites where ghosts can be found wandering between headstones and sometimes out into the road. In November 2012, there was an enormous uptick in the number of sightings, which precipitated the message board posts. Those who saw the ghosts began having nightmares. Those who read about the ghosts began having nightmares. The nightmares themselves were unique, save for one shared feature. They ended with the dreamer thinking they woke up, then seeing a white, ghostly woman with devastating facial disfigurements crouching on their chests. She'll stare at them and trace her fingertips across their faces as she grins with her hideous wide smile.
See, she's just pooping on their chest.
Oh, that's
A
Cleveland steamer.
Yeah, it's a Cleveland steamer.
It's not unusual for cultural events to shape the content of dreams. Following the release of the movie The Exorcist, it was widely reported that people were having dreams about demonic possession. These reports of the ghostly woman are likely tied to the prevalence of the scary stories I mentioned above, along with the sightings of so-called ghosts. I believed that for a little while. Then I started having the dreams. My kids and wife did too. Each night, I'd watch, paralyzed, as the woman sat on my chest and touched my face. I'd wake from the nightmare, sweating and experiencing pain in my cheeks and chin. Soon after, the kids would start to scream. Online searches for the identity of the 19th century serial killer have gone through the roof over the years, according to Google's list of trends. Other trends have started to show up too. Facial pain, difficulty swallowing, temporomandibular joint disorder symptoms, facial eczema. Maybe it's just my own paranoia, which I admit is growing by the day, but I can swear people around here are smiling more often. They're joyless smiles, but smiles nonetheless. My wife, whose stern, no-nonsense expression is legendary at the school where she teaches, now has smile lines creasing the corners of her mouth, and they're turning redder as the days, weeks, and months go by. My kids have always been relatively cheerful. Even when they're bored or tired, you can see a little spark of positivity in their eyes. The spark is gone, but their smiles are as wide as ever. Wider, maybe. The local Connecticut message boards are buzzing about a find someone made regarding the serial killer from 1844. Apparently, there was a chest from Monroe Church that had been given the Historical Society in the 1980s. It was never opened and remained in the Historical Society basement for 30 years. The other day, on a whim, someone opened it. Contained within were the musings of an old nun. Musings on positivity, on happiness, on smiles. And there were drawings of people with impossibly wide grins. A knife was found, wrapped in cloth, tucked into the corner of the chest. This morning, before dawn, I had the dream again. She was on me. For the first time, I noticed the heavy cross around her neck. She caressed my face like she'd always done, but this time her fingernails began to scrape and scratch against my skin. It tickled, then it hurt. It hurt very badly. I tried to struggle, but I couldn't wake up. I couldn't get her off. The sound of a blood-curdling scream exploded through my dream, and I woke up. The woman disappeared. I looked at my wife in bed next to me. She was screaming as she slept. I watched as the corners of her mouth split, and with a sickening crunch, I heard her jaw dislocate. Blood poured down the sheets as I grabbed her and tried to pull her out of bed and back into the waking world. Down the hall, I heard my kids shriek with pain. A half-hour later, we arrived at the hospital. It was full of people bleeding from wounds on their cheeks. Some were worse than others. The place is overwhelmed, and I don't know what to do. Even as we bleed, we're all smiling.
That one's fucking nuts. That was
that was a good one to end on.
Yeah, that was a real good one.
That was fun. So what did you think about this spoopy ghost-filled episode?
Can we turn on the lights?
Yeah, we can turn on the lights now.
Fuck yeah, dude.
You getting creeped out? Were you creeped at all?
I wasn't. Those were relatively tame ghost stories, I have to say.
What about the ghost story of the woman dying in my fucking house?
Can we not do this?
Like 2 floors up.
Stop. Like, I'm fucking serious. Don't do this.
You're saying my name?
Shit.
You're saying my name, which means that you're being serious. Yeah, we can turn the lights on. Yeah, I'm not scared of this house. And to be frank, I'm not really scared of ghosts. I think the thing that makes a ghost most terrifying is probably just the persistence.
Yeah.
Visually, I guess I can learn to pretty much ignore anything. At this point in my life. Specifically if it couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
To me or my surroundings.
Yeah.
It's just a glare at that point. It's
just a glare.
A person
wake up
shaped smudge on my glasses.
Fuck you.
It would also depend on what it looked like. But, if it's a person, it has a mind. And it's stupid.
It's stupid.
You could find a reason to ignore anyone at any point in time.
That was a long episode.
Not really.
No?
We've been doing some 3-hour ones recently.
Holy shit, dude.
Well, we've never crossed the 3-hour line, but we've... Pen Pal we read all of, and that was about 80 pages.
Holy shit.
I wanted to keep it all in one point, because the point of Pen Pal is the growing momentum of the pain that each chapter of that story inflicts on the reader, because it is so... just sad. I was like, crying.
at the end of it.
Franz was like, it's all good, man. I was like, it's a really sad story. We read some fun stories today, though.
Yeah, definitely.
And these stories made me think about my childhood. The ghost that lives in my house.
Can we not do this?
So Disco D, what did you think about this episode?
I enjoyed it, even though it was about ghosts. Most of them weren't bad.
Do you think... Well, I guess I should ask, who would you want to read Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark book 2 with? Because I think I could plan something.
I don't know, to be honest. Skelly Bones would be fun because he's never...
That's true. That's true.
You
and him have good chemistry. Whereas him and Bunch of Baby Ducks just kind of both mellow each other out.
Yeah. I was going to say, that was going to be my next choice, was a bunch of
Baby Ducks.
Bunch of Baby Ducks. Yeah.
Part of me was like, I think Frowns knows.
I was going to say, or Franz McBoohoo, because any
Frowns
episode
knows some of the stories.
is fun with him.
And then that Friday night can consist of us playing
Mario Party.
Or Betrayal.
Mario Party.
Oh, come on. Betrayal, the spoopiest board game ever. And Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, which is not necessarily spoopy, but very Dungeons and Dragons-y. Recently played one where it was, all of us versus a dragon.
That's pretty fucking cool.
Instead of, like, a trader.
Yeah.
There was, like, just a rule book for how the dragon activated. It was, like, a 2-page
awesome.
Survival. Yeah, it was fucking awesome, brah.
Let's play that Mario Party.
Yeah, we're gonna go play Mario Party
it's getting
now.
late.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's not even 10 o'clock.
I have work tomorrow.
Wow.
I have work tomorrow.
Wow.
You know Mario Party takes forever.
Wow.
Bitch! I'm gonna slap you.
So this was episode 85, written Scary Stories, Telling Dark Ghost Stories, Ghosts. I hope everyone got ghosty ghosts and spoops.
You think Sal's a ghost? Don't be a Sal.
At this point, I hope so.
Sal's a fucking dick. Don't be a Sal.
Don't be a Sal. Gotta bring it back.
2 to the 1, 1 to the 3. I like good pussy and I like good trees. Smoke so much weed you wouldn't believe, and I get more